Good morning, everyone. We're so excited that you can join us today on this Friday. Um, Amazing weather in San Diego that we have going on. We're just chatting about how it's a perfect time to go and explore the outdoors. But we're definitely excited that you can join us today because we have an awesome staff here to join us and talk a little bit about outdoors. We have Emily Blanchard. So, Emily, thank you so much for joining us as well. We're so happy to have you here and learn more about you and the projects that you're working on. So thank you, Emily, so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Hector. And hi, everyone. I'm so glad that you could join us today. And it's great that I have the opportunity to talk with all of you. So thank you for being here. And thank you, Hector, also for allowing me this opportunity to have a conversation with you this morning.
Yeah, no, looking forward to it. I know whenever we've done these member meetups, it's been a great opportunity to catch up with some of the staff and chat about the different things that's going on sometimes behind the scenes, and sometimes it's out in our region that is active research happening or active projects that are taking place around our county, but then even our entire region itself. But one of the most valuable times that we love to have here is hearing the little backstory of how our staff and our employees of the NAT joined the museum. And I know you have a really unique and interesting story behind that. So would you mind sharing that with our members who may not know you, and an opportunity to share a little bit about your background?
Yeah. So I'm actually one of the NAT's newest staff members. I just joined late last fall. And so I moved all the way across the country from Cleveland, Ohio. And it was a dream come true having the opportunity to be here and work at the NAT and be a part of the awesome research here. And so I have an environmental background. I've kind of always been interested in the field since I was a kid. And then at some point I must have realized that you could actually pursue a career in the environmental field. And so for my undergraduate and my graduate education, I focused on environmental policy and then environmental science. And that led me to some cool opportunities that all relate to what we're doing today with this Urban Canyons initiative that the NAT is currently engaged in. So I'm really happy to be a part of that. And I am actually the Canyon Science Coordinator for that project.
That's exciting. And you mentioned some of the projects that you've worked on before, and I know that there's an interesting animal that you studied and interesting
Yeah.
species that you studied in your was it your undergrad work that you were doing?
It was after graduate school. And so actually a lot of people may not know that there are wolves in the southeastern United States. They're actually called red wolves. And so I had the opportunity to do some camera trapping research, both within the National Wildlife Refuge, as well as in people's backyards. We worked with community members to see where we could find the red wolves and what other wildlife are in the area. And so, yeah, so that was really, that was a really fun experience. It was actually one of the things that originally attracted me to that part of the country and to go to grad school in North Carolina. So, yeah.
Wow. And so when you say that you were doing field tracking and you were tracking, you said red wolves, right? Was there a moment or like a video that you captured that still to this day sticks in the back of your head that you get excited about, or whenever you hear red wolves, you're like, oh yeah, there was that one time? And is there a story behind that you could share with us?
That's a great question. So actually, one of my duties was I actually went through all of the camera trap footage that we get. So I got to see everything that we were capturing for the most part. And so one of the things that was, it was really incredible actually, even just getting a shot of these animals, because a lot of people don't realize when you're doing camera trapping, you're getting a lot of just grass waving constantly, like thousands and thousands of photos of that. So when you get actual wildlife, that in itself is exciting. And then wolves in general are, they're a bit more elusive. And so just being able to capture them at all is really special. So yeah, so there are some images that still stand out in my mind. There was a wolf, I think it had just rained, it was a red wolf. It had just rained and it was standing out, and there's this like beautiful field behind it. And I don't know, there's just the colors, like the contrast of the sky and the field and the wolf itself. And it also, looking at it as a human, like we're like, oh, it looks kind of sad. It's all wet, and it's just there alone. And but that was one of the coolest images that we captured. But we also got like bears that looked like they were, they weren't actually dancing, but like if you strung the photos together and made a little video of it, it looks like, the bears are dancing with each other. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool, really neat things that you can discover when you do these types of projects.
That's awesome. Yeah. So like kind of a little bit about that, and kind of like why, this kind of work, or, what led you to do this. Is there, was there a moment in time where it just clicked to you, where you said, oh yeah, this is something that, I know you mentioned a little bit about like growing up and being outdoors, but is there like a specific moment or mentors that helped you get to the point where you're at now, where you said, this is an important thing that I want to do. I want to dedicate my life to this. I want to do more research on that. Is there a little moment like that that stands out from your career path, Emily?
So it's interesting because as a little kid, I loved animals so much. And I actually when I was really little, I remember I couldn't watch movies that had animals in them, like Free Willy or like, I don't know, anything like that, because I just would get really sad and cry. And so I think when I was maybe like 5, I started my little like endangered species club. And so it's interesting because that's just something that's just been in me like since I was little, and it always kind of felt like something I was just supposed to do. But then, so I knew I was really interested in wildlife, but then I learned more about the environment. And the whole environmental field is fascinating, whether you're focusing on environmental health, environmental justice, conservation, and it's all related. Environmental policy, there are connections between them all, and there are a lot of opportunities for people to work together. And so I had a lot of different types of experiences. I worked in environmental health, I worked in environmental justice, and then in grad school is kind of when I transitioned, focusing more on conservation. And so with this position, this is a real opportunity. The Urban Canyons Project, it's a community science initiative, and we're focusing all of our research here on our local backyards and canyons in San Diego. So it's a great opportunity to combine a community focus with a research and science focus. And so it's kind of that was one of the things that led me here, was just this opportunity to kind of combine all of these different fields and experiences. So
Wonderful. Can you remind us again of the national reserve that you had mentioned with the work that you did with the red wolves? Mary just asked that question in the Q&A.
Oh yeah, so there's a national wildlife refuge that is it's near the coast of North Carolina, close to the Outer Banks. Actually, you reach it right before you hit the Outer Banks. It's really cool because a lot of people don't realize, a lot of people travel to the Outer Banks and they don't realize that they can pull off and explore this area that has these wild red wolves in it before they even, hit the beach. And so if anyone ever travels out that way, I highly recommend it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And we've been alluding to the Urban Canyons project that Emily is leading, and we're definitely gonna talk a little bit more about that. But before we jump into that entire, we can have an entire hour-long conversation on this project itself, I feel like. But we have a little bit of time here, and because you're relatively new to the museum, Emily, is there what's your first impressions of the museum when you walked in? To see the space? I know a lot of our members have really fond memories about that, but it's always fascinating to hear from someone that's new or visiting for the first time. like their first impressions, and would you share those with us and our members that are joining us today?
Sure. And so, the Nat, obviously it's recently reopened, and I actually moved here, during the pandemic, right before the lockdown began. And so, my experiences with the museum have been very special because, one, it's all, kind of new for me being at the museum. And then, two, you know, I've seen the museum at times where it's a little quiet, days where before it was able to open back up to the public, and I stopped in briefly. And one of the things I was thinking about is it reminds me almost of that movie Night at the Museum, where it's really cool, where you just look out and and it's sometimes it's like when no one's there, it's so quiet that it almost echoes, and you feel like the animals could almost come to life or something. So it's been really, I mean, it's still like I'm still amazed every time I step foot in the space, and I'm really excited to be able to spend more time there in the near future, especially while the public's there, and I get to see families enjoying all the exhibits. But yeah, but it's I even recently I was coming down the main staircase and I stopped at one of the railings and took a picture of everything, just because it's just really, it's a fantastic space, and
Yeah.
it'll take me a long time to to not take it for granted, or to take it for granted. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's really special. So I'm really glad to even be able to to set foot in the Nat. It's really fun.
Yeah, hearing you say that, it makes me want to just throw out there, there is a secret flashlight that exists in the museum that will make the exhibitions come to life. I kid. Right? How great would that be if there is that, our operations team has a secret flashlight that will actually make our exhibitions come to life. But no, that's only in our imaginations.
You're not
And
supposed to
it's
tell
something.
people about that, Hector.
All right, so you've been mentioning a couple times of the urban canyons, a project that you're leading and coordinating for the net. What is it? Something like, what's your first impressions of San Diego canyons? I know when you joined the team, that's one of the first things that you dove right into is
Yeah.
researching and looking at our canyons, and doing that side of research for this project. So what's been some of the first impressions that you've had of our amazing canyons that we have here in San Diego?
So one of them, probably the initial one, was how many canyons there are. There are over 150 canyons in the area, which is just incredible. And then also seeing them in person, just how sometimes, I mean, they're beautiful. And it's also, to me, being originally being from the Midwest, how steep they are. and how many trails there are, all these opportunities that are so close to you, to take a walk and get some exercise in the canyons, or go and admire the plants or see wildlife there. I think that's a really special thing that has really stuck out to me, is just all the opportunities to be outside and be in the canyons here. And actually, I think there's a stat that because of the canyons, approximately 81% of San Diegans live like within 10 minutes of a local park space. So it's really just the fact that they are here, and there are so many, and that they're in close proximity to us. That's pretty special and really stands out to me.
Yeah, and then are there specific goals that you're trying to reach, or like that you're trying to achieve with this project? And if so, can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So one of them is to learn more about the canyon spaces, but not just the canyon spaces, like this urban canyon matrix. So the corridors between the canyon spaces. And one of the things that we're looking at actually is how people's backyards can be habitat corridors, or potential habitat corridors, between the more wild spaces. And so In the late 80s, there was a study that looked at many of San Diego's canyons, and it was looking at how fragmentation was affecting local bird populations. And there have been some other studies that have been specific to certain canyons, but overall, San Diego has developed a lot since the late 80s. And so there are a lot of questions that scientists have about how species are faring today, what species we may find in certain canyons, which ones maybe have adapted better to the urban environment and which ones aren't adapting as well. So these are all things, all opportunities to answer these questions and things that we can learn. But the NAT is, one of our strengths is community science. We have a lot of great community science projects. And so with the Urban Canyons Project, actually, we're taking a community science approach. And so the community is actually being involved in this real research. And with our participants in this project, we have two pilot sites right now. And of course, we're hoping to expand in the future. And so our participants will actually, through their backyard spaces, will be helping us learn about and answer some of these questions. So yeah, it'll be really fun.
Definitely. And you mentioned how many canyons we have in San Diego and how large they are. And we can't, there's no way we could do this alone. Is there any partners or any partnerships that we're working with that you would like to recognize right now, or kind of give a little shout out to them?
Yeah. So we have two great partners. We're working with San Diego Canyonlands and also Groundwork San Diego Choice Creek. And so San Diego Canyonlands actually, so our two pilot sites, one of them is the Ruffin Canyon area, the other one is the Choice Radio Canyon area. And San Diego Canyonlands is doing a great project in Ruffin Canyon this year, where they'll be removing some invasive species, and that will reduce fire risk for the surrounding community and allow the native plants to flourish and reduce erosion. So we're working closely with them. And they advocate for all of San Diego's canyons, so they're a great organization to work with. And then also Groundwork. Groundwork has a site called the Earth Lab, which is an outdoor environmental education center for youth. And so we are working with them, and actually we'll be having one of our research stations at the Earth Lab. So we will get to work with some of the kids that will be there this summer. So I'm really looking forward to that and to seeing all the great work they do in person. And then I also wanted to give shout outs to, there are a lot of Friends of the Canyon organizations in San Diego. That was something else that stuck out to me when I was learning more about San Diego's canyons. And so Friends of Ruffin Canyon and Friends of Choice Creek have also been really great to work with in this project.
So you mentioned our two pilot sites. Is there, what was the thought process that went into selecting those two pilot areas or those two pilot sites? Because we have so many, right? And what was the framework that led you to those two? That you said Ruffin Canyon and Choya's Creek.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it was hard because there's so many great spaces to choose from, and so we looked at a lot of factors. One of them, we looked at the previous research that was done in canyons. We looked at, if there were Friends of the Canyon organizations, because often that's a great way to first, get in touch with the community and learn some perspectives and be able to reach more of the community. We looked at other community organizations that were in canyon areas. We talked with the NAT scientists and about their recommendations, what kind of research questions they had. And we also really wanted to choose two different geographical areas because we really want to be representative and try to be as diverse and inclusive in this project. And so we ended up, we are also influenced as well by the great partner organizations we had. So this opportunity, working with San Diego Canyonlands, and they're doing this great project in Ruffin Canyon. And then the Choice Radio Canyon area is very large. There are a lot of canyon spaces in that area. But the fact that Groundwork had the Earth Lab in that region was another reason that we chose that pilot site as well. But of course, in the future, I mean, we're hoping, we'd love to work with like all of the community and more canyon spaces. And so we're really excited for this pilot phase and what we'll learn in this process.
That's awesome. It's great to hear that there's definitely, the vision to expand and include more sites. Because I know everyone would love to know more about what's happening in their specific canyons that that they live near. But you mentioned a couple of different times community science projects and community science and getting people involved from the neighborhoods.
Mhm.
What what ways can our members that are joining us today right here, how can they get involved? How can anyone that's in our community that may be listening to this, that maybe is excited, that is a science enthusiast, but maybe hasn't done any community science, like how can they get involved with us or with this project specifically?
So one of the easiest ways, which will also be super helpful, is by participating in iNaturalist. So that is one of the components of our project, and that everyone can participate in, and the more people that do, the better. And so that is either there's an app you can download, or you can also create an account online through a desktop computer or laptop. And with that, basically, anytime, say you go and you take a walk in your local canyon space or green space, if you take a picture of plants you see, if you see wildlife, just take a picture of anything and have your location turned on. So it'll geocode the photo. And that actually that will then be used. It's kind of like a survey of what we have in our local canyon spaces and in our communities in general. And to be honest, I mean, without the community doing that, I mean, we really need the power of the people. So the more people that participate in that, the better, and it'll really help us learn about what's in all these spaces, because there's so many, and there's a lot to survey in the spaces. And so this is really a great way for the community to get involved, and it really helps the net too.
Oh, wonderful. So you talked a little bit about the iNaturalist. Is that how we're going to be incorporating residential backyards into Urban Canyons Initiative? That's one of the questions that was asked right now in our Q&A was, can you be more, is there more specifics about how we're actually incorporating residential backyards into this project? Is it through iNaturalist, or is it a more specific, detailed project?
So iNaturalist is one of the ways. And then for our pilot project participants, so we actually are also doing, we have different types of equipment. So one, we're using Malaise traps. Those are insect traps. And those will look at the insects that are found in backyards. And that's important because insects are often ecosystem health indicators. We'll also be using acoustic monitors to record bird vocalizations, and we'll be doing that. We'll be comparing that in backyards versus canyons and seeing, what we find with those pairings. And then there's another type of insect trap that we'll be using as well, called a blue vein trap. And then the last cool component for the backyards project, we will be using environmental monitoring stations that will record things like noise level, light, air particulates, VOCs, different things that can give indications about air pollution or noise pollution or light pollution or temperature. And so this we're hoping will be really interesting to the participants, just to learn, about these things in their backyards, and then also, how it may correlate with the insects and the birds that we're seeing there as well.
Oh my gosh. I just thought of like so many more questions that I want to ask, but
I know.
believe it or not, Emily, we are out of time. Our time is up for this member meetup, because there were so many things that you mentioned right now that is going to be happening in people's backyards, and it just stirred a lot of different questions that I want to follow up with. But I'm sure there's going to be ways to keep
Yeah.
in touch or with you. So if anyone is interested, is there anywhere that they should be looking at to get more up-to-date information, or what some of the research has been that we've been finding? Is there somewhere where our members could go?
Yeah, so we have a new web page on the NAT's website that's for our Canyons project. So As we continue to develop our pilot project, we will be posting updates there. And then also we'll be active on social media as well. If you follow our Facebook or Instagram accounts, and I'm really excited to post some pictures from the field and, of our research stations and et cetera, and give, just share more about the project through social as well. So
That's great. Emily, thank you so much. For
thank
those
you,
of you that are
Hector.
following us along at home, we've gone ahead and put the links in the chat. So if you want to click on those links specific to the community science projects and iNaturalist, and then to our Canyons webpage that Emily was just mentioning. So again, Emily, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Again,
Yeah,
this always flies by, and
it
we're
does.
always left wanting to ask some more questions. So if we didn't get to your question, we will see if we could get those to Emily, and she'll reply back to you directly. But with that, Emily, I'm going to turn it back to Emily Ferguson because she has some great updates for our members and other upcoming events that she would like to share. Emily Blanchard, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for listening today. I really appreciate it.